happiness. And I don't think any society has outperformed us in the pursuit of happiness. But what we've discovered is the pursuit of happiness and the realization of happiness are not the same thing. And we try harder and harder. Another book I want to recommend to you, I seem to be in the book recommending business today. This one, a Christian book. This would be in my top 25 books to read as a believer, by the way. So you won't put this on your list. You've never read it. It's Larry Crabb's book, Finding God. Larry Crabb in his book, Finding God, says this: the citizens of this world live with two objectives. And by the way, they are closely related objectives. Number one, to find some way to make their present lives happier. And number two, to influence the people and materials in their world to cooperate. Well, we're just like everybody else. I mean, everybody. We want to minimize the discomfort in our life, and we want to maximize the happiness or enjoyment or comfort in our lives. We want to get rid of the things that make us uncomfortable, and we want to pursue the things that we think will make us happier. The problem is that while we are trying to decrease our discomfort and increase our pleasure, our methods fail in the long term. I cut this out of the USA Today this week. It's just a trivial example of what I'm trying to say. A new survey from the Kaiser Family Foundation finds that kids spend more than 7.5 hours a day with electronic media, up from about 6 hours in 1999. That's all media: TV, computer, iPod, cell phone, texting, everything. But the survey also reveals that the more media they use, the less happy young people tend to be. Heavy media users, it finds, are more likely to have bad grades, more likely to be often sad or unhappy, self-reporting, less likely to get along well with their parents, and twice as likely to get into trouble a lot. Well, you might say, maybe that's just that the unhappy kids turn to the media more. I say, no, probably not so. Well, maybe the heavy media users have fewer friends. Actually, they're more likely to say they have a lot of friends. Perhaps they don't get enough exercise. Actually, the survey shows they somehow cram more physical activity into their days than others, just short of 2 hours, compared to 1 hour and 44 minutes for light media users. What this article suggests is that we all have media because it's something we think will, whatever the medium is going to enrich or enlarge or make our life better, and they're saying it's not working. And then it says this: my guess is we're going to find that really similar results for adults too. In fact, the happiness issue for adults may even be bigger. That's just one example. If you will go to the list from the last 2 weeks that Pastor Bruce put in the sermon notes of habits, hurts, and hang-ups, I'd challenge you to find one thing on that list that doesn't represent somebody's effort to minimize discomfort or to maximize comfort in their own life. Now, some of them are obvious. You can think, alcohol or drugs, obviously. But what about something like gossip or anger that Pastor Bruce put in there? What about eating or, well, it's the same thing. We do the things we do that become habits, hurts, and hang-ups for good reasons. We do them in order to either to minimize our discomfort or to increase our comfort. The problem is they don't work on the long term. Nobody ever got a drug habit or became an alcoholic for that purpose. They did it to feel better or because they liked the way they feel when they started it. People do all the other things for the same reasons. This isn't new. God spoke about this in His Word. Hear this from Jeremiah. My people have committed two sins. They've forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and they've hewn out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that can hold no water. Jeremiah 2:13. Now, this is a common picture for the time. Unlike us today, no big dams to store water for the summer. There they are in an arid climate. Water's precious. And so what do? They would actually, in the solid rock, bedrock, they would dig holes out of the bedrock, and they would funnel off of their homes, off of their roofs, off of the streets. They would funnel the water into these cisterns to hold for when water was low. Water to drink. Now I want you to think about what that water must have been like. In a time when nobody had central plumbing, nobody had sewers, and everybody had animals. Imagine what the water coming out of those towns into those cisterns was like. Now, I'm a backpacker. I hike in the summer, and it gets real hot when you backpack, even in the mountains, even though the air's cooler, the sun is so hot. In the middle of July, I freeze. I take water bottles, and I freeze my water bottle before I leave home so that as it melts, I have cold water. I hate drinking warm water when I'm hiking. I want cold water. But, in July, sometimes by the time you get that water bottle out at 3:34 in the afternoon, it's long gone. The ice is long gone. And the water is at best tepid. And I don't know what it is about the water out of my tap, but when it's tepid, it doesn't even taste that good. And there's one of my favorite hikes in the Sawtooth is from up to Imogene Lake, from Hell Roaring Lake. And as you crest the hill on the way up to Imogene Lake, on the left there's a large natural spring. It's huge. I mean, it makes a whole creek comes out of this, a whole stream comes out of this spring. It's so big of a stream that you wouldn't think it was a spring. I didn't know the first time I was there until I walked up the creek looking for a place to dip my pump in, and I saw the water bubbling right up out of the rock. And then I realized I don't even use a filter for this water. This is pure and cold. It's the coldest water, colder than any creek or any lake in the middle of the summer is the water coming right out of the ground. Now, imagine, why would anybody drain water out of their car radiator, say, to take up with them hiking because they didn't think they'd have water if that spring was available? Which would you rather drink? That's what God is saying to his people. What's he saying? He's saying, why do you people look the wrong place to find peace and happiness and contentment in your life when I'm the source? When you have me, why would you leave the spring for the cistern? Cistern that in the end won't even hold water for you. In Isaiah 55, God asked this through the prophet Isaiah, why spend money on what does not satisfy? Boy, if there was ever a question for today, that's it right there. Why spend money for what does not satisfy? Why spend your wages and still be hungry? And he goes on to say, come to me. I'll give you what will satisfy. So what does Jesus say to the weary and heavily laden? Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavily laden. And so we come to Jesus. But we have another problem. And this is the problem. Even when we turn to God, it's often more for what we want him to do for us than it is for seeking a transforming relationship with him. In other words, we're after X, Y, or Z in our life. I need this to get rid of this thing. I need this thing to be happy. And we can't get it on our own. So now we come to God and we say, God, you need to get rid of this in my life. You need to give me this. You see, we're coming to God, but we're still looking for the same things that we were looking for before to make us happy and to give us peace. This is what Larry Crabb said in his book. We don't want to know God better. We want to use him to get what we want. That's harsh words, but I think sadly true. Crabb says this, when we